Hi there and welcome to PlaytestCloud's webinar on concept testing. Today I'm going to be discussing how you can use the concept testing feature which is available on the PlaytestCloud platform. Just to give you an overview on PlaytestCloud in case you're unfamiliar with what we do, we are a remote playtesting software where we help game studios in every stage of their game development. Studios use PlaytestCloud to get insights on how players are interacting with their game. We record their on-screen engagements, how players progress through each level of a game, and we also record the audio. So players are encouraged to speak aloud what their opinion of the game is, how they feel about the game, and the developers can then use this feedback in their development process. To give you some insights on PlaytestCloud and our experience, one good figure to know is that we have tested over 25% of the top 100 games on the highest grossing games on the US App Store. So we have experience testing a lot of different types of games and working with a lot of different studios. To give you some insights on our player panel, we have over 135,000 players currently from the US, UK and Canada. Towards the end of last year, we actually introduced the opportunity to test with kids also. So if you do indeed develop games for children, you have that opportunity to test. One thing to note is we have players from such a broad spectrum. It can be from the most casual right through to your hardcore gamer who dedicates 40 hours a week to testing out different games. So it's really a really broad spectrum there. You can really have the opportunity to get insights from your key audience. When players actually sign up to be part of the PlaytestCloud platform, they must detail which specific games they enjoy playing. And with that, we have taken that information and assigned them to those categories of either casual, mid-core, or hardcore, dependent on how much time they actually spend playing games. We have, with all of this information, we've actually created quite a comprehensive list. So we have over 41 game genres, and within those 41 game genres, we've 61,000 games assigned. So you really have the opportunity to reach your target audience and get that really specific feedback. Just some insights into stages of testing, which we've identified a lot of game studios have utilized in their development process. This isn't exhaustive, and it's really just a trend that we have seen essentially of the various stages that we've identified where you can actually test. A lot of studios probably have a variation on terms or names for these specific steps. It's just we feel this kind of encompasses each stage. In 2017, we've seen a lot of the actual testing is happening around that soft launch stage. So really almost when the game is fully developed, even to the point of it could already be on the App Store. Typically, we would think this is a little bit late, but sometimes it tends to work out, and if so, that's great. Otherwise, we would kind of tend to recommend a more iterative style of testing where you're incorporating it into each stage of that development. In 2018, we did see a bit of an increase there when it came to the concept testing and the prototype stage, where studios were actually using PlaytestCloud to get that feedback pretty early on. And as the webinar suggests, we're going to talk all about concept testing in this session and really what it is that you can to test with this specific feature. These are just examples which I'm going to provide. It's really just to provoke a discussion amongst the team, or maybe to spur some ideas where you can actually get that feedback. You weren't aware potentially that you could do that. One of the most common things that we hear from studios is they're never sure when to actually start testing. If it's a case they don't have a playable build, or they haven't decided on which specific mechanic to work with, game mechanic. So we would say don't ever let that limit yourself. It's never too early to start to test. We've seen multiple opportunities to test, from marketing to art style, narrative, advertisements. It's really super broad, and as I said, really versatile, so you can use it for anything, and in any stage it can kind of affirm some of those ideas that you have and give validation, I suppose. Of all of the reasons to test, these are the most common for which we have identified. Generally, that art and story. If it's a case that designers are working independent of developers, they can still get feedback even though they don't have a playable prototype. Can also be to get that audience research, build up a persona. Who is it that you're really trying to target with this game? Who do you think it will resonate the most with? Additionally, then you have that opportunity to get feedback in terms of the marketing or monetization strategy. We can't guarantee, obviously, that this will reflect the same whenever the game comes to launch, but it definitely gives you those insights prior to launching onto the App Store. Some of the benefits of concept testing: it's definitely cost effective in that it can already highlight some issues that you didn't preempt pre-launch, or pre-devotion of a lot of resources to the development. We've seen it before where the art style wasn't necessarily tested with the players pre-launch, and it didn't go down so well. So what we would recommend is it's always good to get that feedback pretty early on. Also, the concept testing is great for facilitating that ideation and promoting team collaboration, cross collaboration. So you can really bring in different team members from the outset, and whomever you feel would benefit from that specific audience feedback. One thing that I would like to note before I dive in a bit more to the concept testing is the opportunity to do, in fact, prototype testing. So sometimes studios do use concept testing and prototype testing terms interchangeably, but with prototype testing, we really look at it as a playable prototype. So you might have a game which you have created on InVision or Adobe XD, and you want to just test that game mechanic. That's definitely something that you can do. It doesn't have to look like this. A lot of the times developers want it super polished before they release it out into the universe, but really you can have it in any shape or form and get feedback. For this specific example, it was really a case they wanted to get feedback where the players would assume that the back to lobby connect is, or they wanted to get more ideas on the actual user interface. One example is of a playable prototype here. It's a pretty popular game, but this was the initial playable prototype prior to them devoting a lot of energy into honing that design and creating a really nice finished product. The technical integrations we support when it comes to prototype testing, you can see here InVision is one, Proto.io, Adobe XD is a big one that's quite popular at the moment, and then obviously Unity is a big one too. And if you have any questions about testing that playable prototype, just get in touch and we'd be happy to help with your testing setup. Back to the concept testing. If you're familiar with our order form at all, you might have seen the concept test option. there. This, I've just highlighted it here. This is where you can actually find it. And when you do go to order that concept test, this is essentially the order form that you will see. You can include up to 30 slides, and within those 30 slides you can have the images or GIFs that you want to get that specific feedback on. And one thing to note here is you do have that opportunity to do special player targeting. So if it's a case that you have, in this specific example, I've used the popular IP of Game of Thrones. So for example, it could be that I want to get that feedback from players who have an affinity with that specific product. So we can screen our panels specifically for those players. So if it is a case that you have identified that opportunity, do get in touch, and you can certainly order those from our order form in the customization section at the bottom. Now, as I mentioned, one of the most common reasons for concept testing is this art and story. So if it was a case that you had multiple design routes that you wanted to maybe take, you have ideas for characters, you want to ensure that they resonate with your audience, you can get feedback on this. As I have used Game of Thrones here, I just pulled some images from Google. But yeah, it's a case that if you did have those specific design routes in mind and you wanted to get feedback already, you can do that. It can be as simple as asking who your favorite character was in this specific IP. What are your what characteristics that you would ascribe to those specific characters? What would you like those characters to do within a game? If it's a case that you you want to isolate the characters, you can find out perhaps what characteristics you would ascribe to this character, this imagery. And again, is this somebody that you would choose as your avatar within a game? It's really, really broad, and you can kind of get some ideas there, I hope. If it's a case that you have a narrative in mind and you want to get maybe some feedback already on whether this specific storyline resonates with your audience, you can certainly upload maybe your storyboard. Doesn't even have to be that detailed, can be just a broad overview with images that you have collected from the internet. Also, you don't necessarily need to include the images. I have just, again, pulled these from Google, so just to give you an idea of what essentially is possible. The reasons to test the narrative would be to really find out if your players relate to this subject matter. Is it a story that they are interested in? Does your target audience respond to this specific narrative? Do they understand the overall goal of the game? Would they be interested in pursuing it further? So yeah, again, just a bit of an idea there. One thing to note too is concept testing is not solely for already or games just in development phase. It can also be for games that have already been launched. So if it's a case that you have an already launched game, but you are hoping to maybe introduce new features, new icons, maybe character customizations or new levels or locations, and prior to, again, allocating those resources in that development, you can find out some feedback from loyal players. So again, we can do that special player targeting where we can screen our panel for players who have experience level of perhaps maybe 1000 and above in Gardenscapes, and you can find out from them if they would be interested in these character adjustments or new proposed locations. So it's just one thing to keep in mind. One key reason why you might actually adopt a concept testing approach would be to build increased audience awareness or research. Find out what it is about your specific audience that would make them inclined to install your game over others perhaps in that genre, or if it's a case again in a popular IP, what they would be interested in downloading. So here I have just taken screenshots from several apps that are actually available on the App Store for Game of Thrones. So you have just a few examples there, and you can kind of ascertain which genre is untapped and find out if the game mechanic you have in mind or the game genre you have in mind would actually fit with this specific IP and your target audience. Additionally, you can find out if it would be a case they would be open to in-app purchases, or if indeed they would make a purchase for a game. Can be quite informative in your stage of launching onto the App Store. The presence on the App Store is another idea for concept testing, which we're seeing quite a lot of. It can be that you're launching a game in quite a genre that has quite a few big players, and it could be that you just want to find out why players would go onto the App Store and necessarily download this game over another game. What is it about these titles that draws people to download them? It's great to get just some audience insights and then perhaps use that whenever you're creating your own App Store presence. Indeed, if even it's a hybrid game, what is it about that specific game that you really enjoy over the others? So it just gives you some ideas there of what you can actually get information on. Then marketing. From a marketing perspective, it can be really broad. As I mentioned, we've had emails tested, logos, in-app purchase, call to actions. It can be really, really broad. So this is just really to give you an idea of what you can actually get some feedback on. The logo design, if it's a case that you have logo iterations, for sure, you can upload those images and those variations and find out which one the player would be most inclined to or would prefers, I suppose, over the other. And here you can see why perhaps that might be more instrumental in that if it's suggested what of these, why would you install this specific app over the other? It can definitely have an impact. The player call to action, if it's a case that you have in-app purchase possibility within your game, you can also find out which buttons could be more appealing to players to actually go through with a purchase. You can find out some player insights in have they made purchases, what made them make the purchase, are they inclined to watch a video perhaps in exchange for in-game currency. These are just some examples of what you can actually get feedback on. This is, here you can see a little example of what the players would see if they are a participant in this particular concept test. Again, this is just an example of a call to action which you can get some feedback on. And again, we're seeing more of these, the in-game advertisements, also banner ads. We have been asked to provide some insights there. You can just upload stills of or screenshots of the display ad within the game and find out what the player's initial feedback is on those, and if they have much experience with that and how they feel about this. This can really help in optimizing your in-game experience for the player. And yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of suggestions on our end. Again, this is so versatile, you can use it however, and the purpose of this webinar is really just to provoke that discussion amongst your team and kind of create a new way of testing if you haven't already implemented it. One thing that we always recommend when it comes to testing is to keep a few things in mind. Your objective, what it is you want to find out and why. This will really determine the success of your playtest once you actually receive all of your data. It'll also really help you when it comes to the analyzing stage of your data if you keep that hypothesis in mind. Team members, whom do you think will most benefit from this specific feedback? It's great to bring as many in as possible, we feel, to kind of get that collaborative spirit from the outset. Again, your target audience, who do you think will provide you with the most valuable feedback? You can use these insights then whenever it comes to your UA strategy. So it can be really beneficial if you keep that in mind. And PlaytestCloud, we're here whenever it comes to your testing needs. So if you have a specific test in mind and maybe it's a little bit outside the box, for sure, reach out. We're happy to help in any way we can. And then timing, like, is it a case that you can use these insights to actually implement some changes? Because that will really, again, reflect on if the playtest was successful or not, or garnering that feedback was beneficial to you and your team. And just to finish on that, one thing to note is we have a help center, which not so many are aware of. There's a lot of articles in there that go into detail on a lot of the products that we actually have available. So always check it out. Again, reach out to PlaytestCloud. Everyone is always happy to help, and we really want to make your playtesting that much easier. One thing, if you do have an account, it's always good to sign up to our newsletter. We only send out updates with regards to new features that we've launched onto the platform, and if there's a new product offering. So we don't spam, we promise. Yes, and thank you for joining. Bye bye.